Sarah stared at the ceiling tiles in Dr. Martinez's office, counting the same water stains she'd memorized over months of weekly visits. Her insurance covered therapy, but only if she maintained a diagnosis. The irony wasn't lost on her that getting better might mean losing this safe space, this excuse for her frequent absences from work dinners and friend gatherings. The prescription pad felt heavy in Dr. Martinez's hands as he wrote the familiar diagnosis. Insurance companies needed clear labels, neat boxes to check. Major depressive disorder. The words felt both accurate and limiting, capturing Sarah's pain while potentially trapping her within its boundaries for years of continued treatment and dependency. Outside the office, the city pulsed with life Sarah felt disconnected from. Colleagues invited her to after-work drinks, but she declined, citing her mental health struggles. The truth was more complicated. Declining felt safer than risking exposure of her carefully constructed vulnerability, the attention it garnered from caring friends and concerned supervisors. Emma's voice carried that particular tone Sarah had grown accustomed to, the one that made her feel simultaneously loved and pitied. "You're so strong for dealing with this," Emma said, reaching across the small table. Sarah nodded, accepting the compliment while wondering if strength was measured by suffering or by overcoming it. The glow of her phone screen illuminated Sarah's hollow eyes as she scrolled through posts from friends living their lives. Engagement parties, promotions, vacations to places she'd never visit. Each scroll was both escape and reminder of the world continuing without her participation, her depression serving as both barrier and excuse. Mark's footsteps approached with familiar hesitation. Sarah had trained him well in the art of concerned inquiry without direct questions. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of HR protocols and genuine care. She provided her practiced response about managing but struggling, watching his face soften with relief at her honesty. Sunday dinners had become performances of concern and careful conversation. Aunt Linda would inevitably ask about her therapy, Uncle Mike about her medication. Their faces reflected genuine worry mixed with discomfort at discussing mental health openly. Sarah played her role perfectly, sharing just enough vulnerability to maintain their protective instincts. The calendar mocked her with its red circles, each one representing another hour of professional attention and insurance coverage. Sarah wondered if the system was designed to help or to maintain dependency. The financial security of consistent appointments felt as comforting as it did trapping, her diagnosis becoming both lifeline and cage. The casserole Emma had brought sat congealing in its container, Sarah's good intentions having lasted only until she'd opened her apartment door. Cooking felt impossible, cleaning felt overwhelming, living felt like a series of small defeats. Her depression had become so integrated into her identity that imagining life without it felt foreign and frightening. The self-help section at the bookstore had become familiar territory, each new purchase representing hope that this time would be different. Cognitive behavioral therapy workbooks, mindfulness guides, books about overcoming depression. They sat in piles around her apartment like monuments to intentions she couldn't quite actualize. The alarm clock showed 11 a.m., but the drawn curtains made it feel like midnight. Sarah's body knew the difference between day and night, but her mind had stopped caring. The pills helped with the sharp edges of anxiety, but they also dulled the possibility of feeling truly alive, creating a comfortable numbness that felt safer than vulnerability. The familiar brick facade of Dr. Martinez's building triggered the same internal debate it had for months. Part of her craved the relief of another session, the permission to unload her burdens temporarily. Another part whispered that dependency wasn't healing, that real recovery meant learning to carry her own weight without professional scaffolding. The rejection letter was polite but final, the same gentle dismissal she'd received from 3 other positions that month. Her resume gaps were explainable, her references were strong, but something in the interview process always revealed her fragility. Employers wanted resilience, not transparency about mental health challenges. The circle chairs felt both welcoming and exposing, each person taking turns sharing their struggles with familiar faces. Sarah had learned the language of mental health advocacy, could speak eloquently about her journey with depression. The words felt authentic and performative simultaneously, part of her identity as someone who was trying but struggling. The concealer covered the physical evidence of sleepless nights, the foundation created the illusion of normalcy. Sarah had perfected the art of looking pulled together while feeling completely unraveled. Her appearance became armor against questions, makeup and clothing choices carefully calculated to prevent others from seeing her true state. The park had become her refuge and reminder of what she felt she was missing. Families picnicked on blankets, couples walked hand in hand, friends laughed together. Sarah watched from her bench, grateful for the space to be alone without explanation, while simultaneously mourning her disconnection from spontaneous joy and easy relationships. The internet had become her unofficial university of mental health, hours spent reading about symptoms, treatments, recovery stories. Each article confirmed her experiences while also overwhelming her with information. The more she learned, the more she realized how much she didn't understand about her own mind and motivations. Jessica's perfectly manicured hands gestured as she described her latest promotion, her eyes occasionally flicking to Sarah's untouched wine glass. They loved each other fiercely, but Sarah could see the calculation in her sister's concerned glances, the way she measured Sarah's stability against her own carefully constructed success. The journal pages filled with the same themes repeated in different handwriting, her inner voice becoming more articulate about depression while her actual behavior remained unchanged. Writing about wanting to get better felt different from actually taking the steps required for transformation, the gap between intention and action growing wider with each therapeutic session. The threshold between her apartment and the outside world felt increasingly significant, each crossing requiring energy she wasn't sure she possessed. Her space had become both sanctuary and prison, the familiar mess of unwashed dishes and unfolded laundry representing the comfort of stasis over the risk of movement toward uncertain improvement. The rearview mirror reflected a face that looked tired but acceptable, the careful application of makeup and choice of professional clothing having done their job. Sarah wondered how many people saw through her carefully constructed appearance, how many recognized the difference between looking okay and actually being okay. The self-help aisle had expanded over the years, new titles promising breakthroughs and transformations that always seemed just beyond reach. Sarah's fingers traced familiar author names while her mind calculated which books she'd already read, which concepts she'd already tried, which promises had already failed to deliver lasting change. The waiting room magazines had become old friends, their pages dog-eared from repeated visits. Sarah knew which issues were current, which articles were worth skimming, how long the wait usually lasted. The routine had become part of her identity, the regular appointments providing structure and validation for struggles that might otherwise feel shameful or isolating. The text messages flowed easily, her friends responding with predictable care and concern. Sarah had become skilled at articulating her struggles in ways that garnered support without revealing the complexity of her actual situation. The digital connection felt safer than face-to-face vulnerability, allowing her to control the narrative of her mental health journey. The coffee had grown cold hours ago, Sarah's body having forgotten the simple pleasure of warmth and caffeine. Morning routines felt insurmountable, the basic act of making breakfast representing a mountain of small decisions she wasn't sure she could navigate. Her depression had become so integrated into daily life that its absence felt unimaginable. The navy blazer hung perfectly pressed, ready for the job interview she'd scheduled and then canceled twice. Sarah's reflection in the mirror showed someone who looked capable of professional success, but her mind whispered about the risk of exposure, the possibility that pretending to be well might actually require becoming well, and what that transformation might demand of her. Dr. Martinez's words about progress felt both encouraging and terrifying, the careful language of therapeutic advancement carrying implications Sarah wasn't sure she was ready to embrace. Getting better meant changing not just her symptoms but her entire relationship with the identity she'd built around her struggles, the attention she'd received, the excuses she'd made. The city stretched before her in waves of light and shadow, each window representing lives being lived with varying degrees of struggle and success. Sarah's hands gripped the balcony railing as she considered the possibility that her depression had served its purpose, that the safety of familiar suffering might finally be less appealing than the uncertainty of genuine healing and authentic living.